Welcome back, friends, to The Pulse. I am David Harris Jr. Well, Democrat voters might finally be sick and tired of corporate media's lies. In a new poll, 72% of Democrats said they've started to limit their media consumption about government and politics. The study suggests that they've been demoralized by the 2024 election, but there could even be a deeper reason. Another study reveals that half of liberal white women under 30 have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. So is the lying liberal corporate media literally driving its viewers insane? Joining me now is investigative columnist for the Daily Signal, Tony Kinnett. Tony, thank you so much for joining me this evening. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's one thing that half of all white liberal women under 30, and they actually did the whole chart, men, women, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, other, whatever. But what stood out was that half of white liberal women under 30 have been diagnosed, which means they've gone and seen somebody and have some kind of mental health issue, disorder. What are your thoughts on that? Is it the media they're watching? Is it something else?
I mean, I think it definitely has to do with the media that they're watching, David. And this is one of the best parts of an entire society that has been built on needing some type of victim tag, right? You got to have something that's either wrong with you or that makes you oppressed or some reason for people to feel bad so that you can get in on that sweet, sweet affirmation. And that's what liberal women were drip fed this entire election, weren't they? Kamala Harris, just yas queen. She's just going to be amazing. And like, guys just don't like how masculine Tim Walz is doing his leg kicks. And he's got a camo hat, David, a camo hat. And then when it failed, all of a sudden, it turns out that wine moms have expiration dates. So how about that?
Yeah, there was definitely a whole lot of effeminate and boisterous emotional vomit. Really, it's like the whole thing was joy. It was just joy, and then Walsh, he didn't add too much to it. But what about the fact now that 72% of Democrats are just turning off politics and don't want to even hear if something has to do with the government? I think that's actually a really good thing, right? Maybe they will calm down. Maybe they'll back up. Maybe they'll unplug from the matrix, the propaganda machine that's been lying to them, and then maybe they'll see a whole bunch of winning from President Trump and his Agenda 47, and maybe they'll wake up and join the team. What are your thoughts?
Well, we did see that from a lot of union voters. When I was actually in Clinton Township, north of Detroit, during the first UAW strike, I talked to a lady who said, well, he may have been a redacted. But as far as when Trump was in office, he may have been a jerk, but there was food on the table and there was money in my pocket. And she told me at the time, obviously a year had gone by after, that she would vote for Trump, though she had been a lifelong Democrat. I mean, we sure could see that. As far as people shutting off some of the major normie media and going out and touching some grass, I'd recommend that to just about anybody. But as I've thought most since I've seen this data, since this graph came out, that large number of Democrats lying about President Biden's health and lying about how favorable Kamala Harris was doing in the polls were two lies that everyone knew were just flat out untrue. I mean, you can't even sugarcoat them. And yet the media carried on with both of those until the bitter end. It's really hard to take that kind of a lie and not shut off the TV afterward. And it seems liberal women have finally reached their breaking point.
Yeah, well, and when 72% of Democrats, that's all, that's both genders. There are two.
Right.
And all different demographics as well. But I think that is a very positive sign. I think it's a positive signal. I think you're right, 100%. It's a signal and a sign that they knew and they found out the hard way that they were being lied to. They were being duped. I reported on this earlier this week, I think it was, that Joe Biden's aides literally intentionally kept him from doing meetings. His own cabinet secretaries had to give a list of questions so that he could come prepared with answers. And they were doing that from almost day one of him stepping foot into the Oval Office. And they'd also lied to Joe Biden about how well he was doing economically. They were giving him fake numbers. So it was lying all around, including Joe Biden. So no wonder people are turning it off. Do you think that they'll eventually come around? Do you think it's just going to take wins from President Trump in the new administration for people to say, I need to find out what's going on, and then maybe they'll turn on my show instead of MSNBC?
Well, I'd say that'd be a lot better for their mental health. As to whether they will finally admit that they are wrong, which they have to, either to themselves or to others, and really move into that kind of a better place, I think it's doubtful, because that affirmation culture and the victim culture is still so prevalent in those suburban communities. I'd like to be optimistic. You'll see some, absolutely, but I think the majority are going to sit there, and unfortunately, the ladies on The View seem very rooted to those particular positions.
Well, when it comes to ladies on The View, they've had to recant. They've had to share some, legalese from their attorneys so that they didn't get sued. What kind of effect do you think that's having on these suburban, wives, house moms, or the wine club when they're watching The View for, their latest laughs and the gurus of all things political and global, and they're seeing these women of The View actually have to, recant some things and issue some statements of apology, basically.
It's one thing to think that you have the upper hand and to think that you're right and be told that you're wrong, and then to find out via legal actions and ABC News $15 million settlement to Donald Trump that no, things actually do work differently. There are times when you have to play by the same rules. And just to back what you said about President Biden and being lied to by his aides, I did an entire segment on my show this evening about how if Biden is not compos mentis enough to stand in front of a grand jury, as Robert Hur pointed out, how is he compos mentis enough to issue a series of pardons for crimes that supposedly haven't even committed? How are those binding? And that is something that I think is really going to shock a lot of people out of that trust the legacy media always kind of blank stare that we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we've seen too much of that blank stare. And you bring up a very, very important point. Hopefully there's something that can be done. If he's not mentally competent enough to stand trial, as he wasn't when that came out, and he's not competent enough to run for president again, and he's only getting worse, how is he pardoned now close to 9,000 people from really some heinous crimes as well? Do you think that that's going to get looked at a little bit more deeper? I don't know how scholarly your legal prowess is, but do you think any of that should come to light and then maybe come into question?
You would have to see a direct challenge made, at least at a federal court level, to some of these pardons. We don't have a lot of legal precedent for this because we've never really been in a situation like this since Ford really foolishly did the whole for any crimes that Nixon may have committed as well. That's created some weird precedent that's not constitutional. The real problem in this particular situation that I find is the question of cherry picking from the Constitution. So if Biden walked into the Oval Office tomorrow and said, I want to nuke the western half of Yemen. The Houthis are there. I've decided as the commander in chief, we're going to nuke Yemen. Are they expected to follow that? Or do we suddenly say, all right, you've totally lost it, we're not going to do that? They were willing to do that for Trump. The generals admitted so. So is Biden the commander in chief and the head of the executive branch, or isn't he? You can't have it both ways. And the answers in this case matter quite a lot more than just pardons.
They absolutely do. They do. Tony, Kinnett, thank you so much, brother.